There are trains made for speed, there are trains made for long journeys, but there are also trains made just for size and weight. From the wide old trains to the giant trains that are extremely heavy. These are the 15 biggest trains ever made in history. But before we continue, please like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much. Number 15, Union Pacific Big Boy. When we think of big trains, we usually think of their length. But when it comes to thickness, width, and overall weight, only one stands out. The Big Boy was built from 1941 to 1944 by the American Locomotive Company for the Union Pacific Railroad. Its purpose was to haul heavy freight over the mountains of Utah and Wyoming. It is about 40.5 meters long and weighs approximately 1.2 million pounds, or around 540. What sets it apart is the size of its body. The boiler is huge. This is the part where steam is produced. It reaches up to 300 psi of pressure, so the body really needs to be wide and thick. It wasn't made for speed. It was made for power. It can pull a train weighing over 3,600 tons even uphill without any help from another train. In 1962, it was retired from service because it was replaced by something more modern. But one unit, number 4014, was restored in 2019 and is still running today. It is now recognized as the largest steam-powered train still operating in the world. The Big Boy wasn't made to be beautiful. It wasn't made to be fast. It was made for one thing only, to pull whatever was given to it. Number 14, TGV Duplex. A duplex train set has 2 engines and 8 connected coaches. Inside the double-decker carriage, a single set can carry more than 500 people depending on the seat arrangement. The front of the train is rounded to move more smoothly through the air, but at the back, you'll notice that its body is taller and thicker. This is where the width of the duplex comes from. They maximize the space inside, even with the size limitations of the train. Engineers have to carefully consider every detail. For the stairs and support of the upper deck, they have to make sure it's still stable even when running at over 300 km/h. In 2007, a modified TGV Duplex set the world record of 574 km/h during a test run. Even though that's not for everyday use, it shows how strong the construction of this train is. Even though it's taller and bigger inside, it remains stable at high speeds. Because of its design, it has a low center of gravity, so it doesn't get easily shaken. This isn't the widest train in the world because the rails in Europe have limitations, but it's one of the best when it comes to space utilization. With the same train length, it can carry more passengers compared to the old single-level TGV. Number 13, GE AC 6000C. In the late 1990s, GE Transportation built one of the most powerful diesel trains. For freight, this is the AC 6000CW. It was built from 1995 to 2001 and was designed to compete with the most powerful trains in North America. It has 6,000 horsepower, one of the highest during its time. It weighs around 432,000 pounds, or approximately 196 tons. This weight is distributed across 6 wheels, each with its own power. There's a limit to how heavy a train can be based on each wheel, so this is almost the maximum size for a train. When it comes to width, this is one of the widest bodied trains. The standards in North America are more lenient, so the design is wider compared to those in Europe or Asia. Inside its long hood, you'll find a massive diesel engine, along with the cooling systems, radiators, and other electrical components. These require a lot of space. That's why the body of the train became even wider. The front of the train is wider and safer for the driver. This train wasn't made for speed. It was built for power, durability, and the ability to haul heavy loads over long distances. This design widens the front of the train and provides greater protection for the crew compared to the older, narrower trains. It was used by major companies like CSX Transportation and Union Pacific. especially for hauling heavy cargo such as coal. Even though it was rated at 6,000 HP, some of the early units had problems because of the engine's excessive power. So eventually, the horsepower was slightly reduced to make it last longer and be more reliable. But even so, it remains one of the largest and heaviest trains that use diesel. This is different from the old steam trains. Here, all the weight is in a single body, and it's important to note that there are other trains in other countries that are heavier when combined. But when it comes to a single train used on a regular rail network, this is one of the largest and widest. Number 12, the trains of Rio Tinto. In the Pilbara region of Australia, there are trains that are among the longest and heaviest in use in the world. Their job is to transport iron ore from the mines to the ports.
Ang haba ng isang tren ay pwede.
They stretch over 1.5 miles or more than 2.5 kilometers. Usually there are several engines at the front and sometimes extra ones in the middle, pulling more than 200 wagons. When fully loaded, a train can weigh over 30,000 tons. This means it's one of the heaviest trains regularly used in the world. Each wagon is filled with iron ore, so it's loaded to capacity. The rail lines used here are private and specifically made for this kind of operation. Because these are not mixed with passenger trains, the design is reinforced for extreme weight. In 2018, Rio Tinto launched the world's first fully autonomous long-distance freight train system. This means there is no longer a driver inside. It is controlled from a remote control center. There were previous experiments with trains even longer than this one, like a train in 2001, that reached almost 7.3 kilometers, but it was not used regularly. Rio Tinto's trains are actually used every day in operations of this scale. In simple terms, it's not just a train, it's like a huge moving mountain divided into smaller parts. And even though there are also heavy trains in other countries, like coal trains in the US and iron ore trains in Brazil, the trains in Pilbara are almost always among the largest in daily use. It's over 2 kilometers long and carries thousands of tons. It's one of the largest trains in use in the world today. Number 11, Pennsylvania Railroad S1. In 1939, the Pennsylvania Railroad unveiled one of the largest and most impressive steam trains ever built. It was called the S1 and was built by Baldwin Locomotive Works. It was showcased at the New York World's Fair, and it immediately became the center of attention because of its size. While the big boy was built for freight power, the S1 was designed for passenger speed, but it was still extremely large. Its length was about 42.7 meters, including the coal and water tender, and its weight was over 1 million pounds or around 480 tons. What's unique about it is its wheel design. It has a single, continuous body. It isn't divided like other large ones. A big part of it is dedicated to producing steam. That's why it can run extremely fast. It can reach over 100 miles per hour when running smoothly. In terms of appearance, it's also unique. It has a smooth body that looks like one solid, continuous shape. Almost all of the moving parts are covered. Because of this, it looks even wider and thicker, but its size comes with a trade-off. Since the frame is solid, it has difficulty turning on tight curves. It's more suited for long, straight railways. Only one train like this was made. It entered service in 1940 and was retired in 1949. It wasn't preserved. It was dismantled and turned back into steel, and now it can only be seen in photos and documents. But even now, it's still one of the largest steam trains that combine size and speed in a single engine. Number 10, EMD DDA-40X Centennial. In 1969, the Electromotive Division built the longest single-piece diesel train. It was made for the Union Pacific Railroad to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the first transcontinental railroad in the U.S. That's why it was called Centennial. Each unit measures about 29.9 meters or almost 98 feet long. Because of this, it is one of the longest single-unit diesel locomotives. It's not divided into sections. Unlike regular trains that have just one engine, The EMD DDA-40X Centennial has 2 diesel engines in a single body. Each one has a power of 3,300 horsepower. So combined, it reaches 6,600 horsepower, the most powerful of its time. It has 8 wheels with enough power to balance a weight of about 247 tons and still stay within the rail limits. When it comes to size, its body is thick. The front is wide, the interior is long. And because it has 2 engines, the systems inside are also doubled, like the cooling, fuel, and electricity systems. This means it's not just long, it's also packed inside. Between 1969 and 1971, 47 units were made and used until the mid-1980s. Eventually, it became more practical to use several smaller trains instead of one extremely large and complicated machine. One unit, number 6,936. It has been preserved and is still running today for special trips. Up to now, it is still the longest single-unit diesel locomotive. Number 9, N700 series Shinkansen. When it comes to the width and size of the train's interior, this is one of the leading high-speed trains in the world. It is operated by the Central Japan Railway Company and the West Japan Railway Company, and it started in 2007. Japan has its own high-speed rail system. There was none before 1964. That's why they had more freedom to design wider trains compared to Europe. Its width is about 3.38 meters, which is wider than most high-speed trains in Europe. Because of this, the interior is more spacious. In standard class, there are 5 seats in a row, 3 on one side and 2 on the other. In first class, there are only 4 seats, 2 on each side. That's why it's more spacious. This means more people can fit inside, even without extending a standard N700 series Shinkansen on the Tokaido line. It already has 16 cars, and it can carry more than 1,300 people. When you look at it from the front, you'll immediately notice that it looks wide and stable. To balance its size and weight, its body was made using lightweight aluminum. It also needs to be aerodynamic because it reaches up to 285 kilometers per hour during normal trips. Its front has a special shape to properly direct the airflow while keeping the body strong. Another problem with this kind of train is the tunnel boom. That's the loud sound when it enters a tunnel. That's why engineers adjusted the pressure and shape to reduce it. What's unique about this train is that its bulk comes from its width, not its height. It's wider compared to the old trains in Japan. That's why more passengers can fit inside. Because the Shinkansen lines are separate and not mixed with freight trains, they're able to use this kind of wide design without any clearance problems. In other words, this is one of the widest and highest capacity high-speed trains used every day. Number 8 is the record train of BHP. In June 2001, they conducted a test in Pilbara, Australia, and they created a train that is recognized as the longest and heaviest train to move under its own power. It was composed of 8 locomotives pulling 682 freight cars. Its length reached 7.3 kilometers, and the total weight exceeded 99,000 tons. This is not normally used every day. This was a special test, but it actually moved on real tracks. Each wagon was filled with iron ore, one of the heaviest loads a train can carry. When we talk about fatness, it's not about the width, it's about the total weight. Imagine hundreds of freight cars joined together, forming one massive moving mass of steel and minerals. This traveled approximately 275 kilometers from the mine to the port. Even today, although there are still large trains in Australia, this record has not yet been surpassed. There are almost no trains in the world that reach this kind of weight, except for mining trains, at almost 100,000 tons. This is the heaviest train to move under its own power. Number 7, the China Railways QJ. This is one of the last large steam trains made for heavy cargo. It was made by China Railways from 1958 to 1988. More than 4,700 units were made. This is one of the most produced large steam trains of its kind. The QJ was made to pull heavy trains, especially coal. It weighs almost 137 tons without the tender and reaches up to 219 tons when the coal and water container is included. It has 10 driving wheels, so it needs to be big and sturdy to handle the weight and power required. At the front, you can see the thick cylindrical boiler, the wide smoke box, and the large steam cylinders. It wasn't made to look beautiful, it was made for work. All of its parts are visible, and a large portion is dedicated to producing steam. It was used in northern China and Inner Mongolia to pull long coal trains until the early 2000s. While other countries had already switched to diesel and electric, China was still using steam back then. Today, some QJ locomotives have been preserved and are used on heritage railways, both inside and outside China. This is one of the last examples of large steam locomotives that were made in huge numbers. The South African Class 9E on the Sichin Saldanha railway line in South Africa, you can find one of the most powerful and heaviest electric freight locomotives. It was made for Transnet Freight Rail. It runs on a 50 kV AC electrified line, a railway specifically built for heavy iron ore cargo. It weighs almost 190 tons. It has 6 wheels that provide traction, so it has strong pulling power even for long trains. In simple terms, this train was made for one thing: to pull extremely heavy cargo continuously and without stopping. In normal operations, the South African Class 9E is not alone. Usually there are several locomotives at the front and additional ones in the middle or at the back. Together, they pull the train, which can reach more than 340 wagons, and its total weight often exceeds 40,000 tons. It is wider and taller than a regular passenger train. Because it is electric, it has large equipment inside to make it work, especially because it uses 50,000 volts. It uses specialized equipment made only for freight. It reaches almost 860 kilometers. It can easily support the extremely heavy train. Overall, this is one of the largest and heaviest electric trains used every day. Number 5 is Velero Rues, known as Sapsan. When we think of high-speed trains, they usually look slim. But this train is one of the widest. It was made by Siemens for Russian railways and started operating in 2009 on the Moscow to St. Petersburg route. The rail gauge in Russia is wider than in Europe, so the trains are also wider. Its width is about 3.26 meters. That's why the interior is more spacious than most high-speed trains in Europe. Each set has 10 cars and can carry more than 600 passengers. It uses lightweight aluminum so it doesn't become too heavy while still remaining durable. Even though it's wide, its shape is still streamlined to remain fast. It doesn't run on separate tracks like in Japan, so it has to use the existing rail lines. Its power is distributed throughout different parts of the train, so there's more space for passengers, and it runs more smoothly. In other words, this train used the wider rail gauge to make the ride more spacious and comfortable. Velero RUS is among the widest modern high-speed passenger trains. Number 4, the PRR T1. In the final era of steam trains in America, this was one of the biggest designs. It was made for the Pennsylvania Railroad from 1942 to 1946. The T1 is a duplex. It has 2 sets of wheels in a single body for both speed and power. It weighs about 227 tons without the coal and water tender and over 800,000 pounds when that's included. The most remarkable thing about it is its appearance. It has a smooth and rounded body designed by Raymond Loewy that covers most of its parts. At the front, it has a wide nose and a thick body, making it look bigger compared to other trains. It was made for high-speed passenger service and could reach over 100 miles per hour, but it had problems with reliability. The wheels often slipped and it was hard to maintain. By the early 1950s, it was replaced by diesel locomotives. All 52 units were retired in 1956 and none remain today, but there is a group building a replica using the original design. In short, this is one of the largest, the biggest, and bulkiest steam passenger train. Number 3, the EMD SD 90 Mac. In the 1990s, North American railroads wanted stronger and more efficient trains. That's why electromotive diesel made one of the most powerful diesel trains. It had a power output of up to 6,000 horsepower, one of the highest for a single engine. It weighs around 190 to 196 tons. It has 6 wheels to evenly distribute the weight, and its body is wide because of the size of the engine. When it comes to cargo, it was made for one thing: to pull heavy loads faster and more efficiently. In simple terms, this is one of the biggest and bulkiest diesel trains used every day. The EMD SD 90 Mac is considered bulky because of its large body and the heavy components inside. Its long hood houses a massive engine, either a 16-cylinder engine or the larger 265H engine in the high-power version. Because of this, it needs more space inside, so the entire body of the locomotive becomes larger. Compared to trains in Europe, which are narrower due to rail limitations, this one looks wider and heavier. It was used by large companies like Union Pacific Railroad and Canadian Pacific Railway. At the front, you can see the wide front cab, and behind it is the long hood housing the engine, cooling systems, and electrical components. With the combination of power, engine size, and body width, this is one of the largest and heaviest diesel trains used every day. Number 2, the Union Pacific 9000 class. In 1926, this was introduced by the Union Pacific Railroad as a unique design among steam locomotives. It is well known for its 412 two-wheel arrangement with 12 driving wheels, a rare setup. A total of 88 units were built from 1926 to 1930. It weighs almost 219 tons and over 800,000 pounds, including the coal and water tender. Because of the 12 driving wheels, it needed a long and wide body. It used a 3-cylinder design to distribute the power to all the wheels. Because of this, a larger portion is also doing the work. Just by looking at it, you can immediately notice it looks long, wide, and very large on the rails. It's not divided, so the body is just one whole piece. That's the reason why it's difficult on curves, but performs well on long straight tracks. It was used until the late 1950s, and there's still one unit on display up to now. Simply put, this is one of the biggest and bulkiest steam trains. It's not divided. Number 1, the BHP Mount Muse. If we're talking about the heaviest train based on total weight, this is clearly number 1. In June 2001, BHP conducted a test on the Mount Newman Railway in Australia, the longest and heaviest train to move under its own power. It was made up of 8 locomotives and 682 freight cars. It reached a length of 7.35 kilometers and weighed over 99,700 tons. In other words, this is the largest moving train ever recorded, not because of its width, but because of its immense weight. To better understand, a typical freight train in North America usually weighs only around 10,000 to 15,000 tons. Modern mining trains in Australia, on the other hand, can reach over 30,000 tons. But the BHP Mount Newman iron ore train is almost 3 times heavier than that. Each train here has a power of 6,000. And they're not just at the front, they're also placed in different parts of the train. This is done to better control the train's pulling force, because if all the power is only at the front, the connection between the cars could break due to the heavy weight over a length of 7.3 kilometers. The train traveled from the mine to the port over a distance of approximately 275 kilometers. And importantly, this is not just a simple demonstration. This is a real test to see what the BHP railway system can handle. The rails used here are not ordinary. This is a private railway specifically built for heavy iron ore transport. The rails are stronger, the base is thicker, and the bridges are sturdier. Everything is designed to handle extreme weight. It's also important to note that this train was a record test, not for daily operations. Currently, there are still trains that reach 2 to 3 kilometers in length and over 30,000 tons, but there is still no regular train that can beat this record of almost 100 100,000 tons. And the reason why this is the heaviest train is not because of its width or height, but because of its total weight. Just imagine almost 100,000 tons of steel and minerals moving as a single train. In the history of railways, nothing has ever come close to this level of mass.